Once again, welcome and thank you all for joining us today for our October installment of our monthly virtual workshop series. My name is Thomas Vague, pronouns are he, him, and I am a project director with the Inclusive STEM Ecosystems for Equity and Diversity program at the American Association for the Advancement of Science. On behalf of our AAAS-IUSE initiative, I would like to welcome you to today's workshop, Designing and Reforming Institutional Programs to Better Support Undergraduate Students. Today's workshop will feature presentations from Dr. Dan Hanley and Brandon White. Before we jump into the workshop, I have a few housekeeping notes. This presentation is being recorded. The recording will be made available in the coming weeks on our website at AAASIUSE.org, and the slides are posted and available on the website if you'd like to follow us along. You will also receive an email with a link to the recording when it's available, likely next week. And please note we will transition to a Q&A discussion after the presentation. So please hold any questions for those breakout sessions. We'll give you instructions for entering those breakouts, and then we'll have a discussion on the presentations that we heard today. Just as a note, these breakout sessions are meant for deeper engagement with the group, and they will not be recorded. And additionally, we have closed captioning for this workshop. You can download and view the full transcript by clicking the CC or caption button at the bottom of your screen. And for those of you who are new to the AAAS-IUSE initiative, we seek to support faculty, students, and the greater undergraduate STEM education community by disseminating research and knowledge about the AAAS-IUSE community, best practices, and evidence-based research. We invite you to learn more at AAAS-IUSE initiative on our website, and hope you can also join our community as future contributors. You can also follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, and at IUSE program, and on LinkedIn to stay up to date on the latest events, blogs, or share what you've learned at today's workshop. And now we'll shift over to our first presentation of the day. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Dr. Dan Hanley, Director of STEM Education Research and Evaluation at Western Washington University. So Dr. Hanley, I'll turn it over to you. Dan, I think you're muted, just so you know.
All right. Are you seeing the slideshow correctly?
I'm seeing your presenter view. Yeah, I think that should switch it.
All right.
Great.
All right. Great. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you all for joining us here today. We're excited to share our work from our IUSE project called Better in STEM, or Building Educational Theory Through Enacting Reforms in STEM. But that's a mouthful, so we'll just stick with Better in STEM for this presentation. I'm Dan Hanley. I'm the Director of STEM Education Research and Evaluation and the PI of the Better in STEM project at Western Washington University in Bellingham, Washington. I'm joined here today by two of my colleagues and MPIs, Dr. Tran Fung, who is a physics professor at Whatcom Community College in Bellingham, and Dr. Saraswathi Nair, who is a professor and chair of the Health and Biomedical Sciences Department at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, which we call UTRGV. Better in STEM is a 5-year collaboration between UTRGV, Whatcom Community College, and Western Washington University. The project is designed to help STEM faculty and departments incorporate equitable, student-centered instructional strategies into their courses and classrooms. Now, our work is grounded in a shared vision for evidence-based STEM instruction. And instead of walking you through all the aspects of that vision, I'd like to engage you with some of the indicators to really help give you a picture of how we view evidence-based teaching and learning in undergraduate STEM courses. So take a few minutes. What I'd like is for you to think about a specific STEM course you have taught or taken as a student. To what extent were students, you as a student or your students, engaged in the following ways? And then once you're done, to let me know that you are done in the chat, in just a few words, describe the learning environment in this type of STEM course described by these indicators. But first, take a few minutes and think about a specific STEM course you have taught or taken, and to what extent were students engaged in these ways. So when you're done, just in the chat, write a few words that describe the type of classroom learning environment that this describes. All right, people are kind of describing it as engaged and student-centered, culturally responsive and collaborative, strong structure and scaffolding, asset-based, metacognitive. So great. It just rather than walking through and go all the aspects of how we view effective evidence-based STEM instruction, this is just to give you kind of a picture as we start of what an undergraduate STEM classroom could look like. Right. So why are we working with STEM faculty and departments to incorporate equitable student-centered instructional strategies into their courses and classrooms? Well, low-income, first-generation, and systemically non-dominant students benefit the most from active student-centered teaching and learning strategies, yet they are the least likely to experience them at higher ed institutions across the country. Carl Wyman has argued that the biggest barrier to faculty's use of active learning strategies is the lack of a shared framework to define and measure effective teaching. And AAAS has noted that such frameworks should redefine equity and inclusion as a key component of effective instruction. Instructional frameworks to guide teaching are commonplace in K-12 schools. Marzano framework, Danielson, 5 dimensions of teaching and learning. And as we've presented our work at conferences across the country, we often ask our attendees if their STEM departments have a framework that clearly defines what evidence-based instruction looks like to help guide their teaching and their instructional improvement efforts. Not surprisingly, very few STEM faculty have said that their departments have such an instructional framework. The veteran STEM theory of change is that improved teaching and learning in undergraduate STEM departments can occur through the implementation of a coordinated set of concurrent top-down and bottom-up strategies to address the 4 categories of change from Henderson, Beach, and Finkelstein. The rest of our talk will be structured around these 4 categories of change, and we'll talk about the work we have done to develop a shared vision around equitable student-centered STEM instruction, develop faculty participants' knowledge and skills with the pedagogies that comprise our instructional framework, support faculty as they collaborate within instructional change teams to improve their enactment of the pedagogies, and have conversations within departments about how to support faculty's use of evidence-based teaching. In year 1, a team of faculty across our 3 partnering institutions worked to develop an instructional framework grounded in research on equity and inclusion and active student-centered instruction. We received feedback on drafts of the instructional framework from our advisory board, external evaluators, conference participants, and our cohort 1 faculty members. For 2 years, cohort 1 faculty members worked with us to develop their knowledge and skills with the framework pedagogies, and they provided feedback to help us improve the framework, supporting materials, and the ICT collaborative structures, the instructional change team collaborative structures. About 40 STEM faculty members across our 3 partnering institutions participated in cohort 1. And then this past summer, we began working with a second cohort of about 60 STEM faculty across our 3 partnering institutions. Lastly, we've been meeting with departments and chairs to share our materials and lay the foundation for discussions about ways departments can support faculty's use of evidence-based instruction. So, what is our instructional framework? It's a cohesive structure of research-based components for equitable student-centered undergraduate STEM teaching and learning that is adaptable and applicable across all STEM disciplines and student needs. And it really captures the complexities of teaching and learning, but it will require a significant amount of professional development and practice for faculty to internalize the components of the framework and enact the pedagogies well in their classrooms. It's not a curriculum framework or a set of standards that specifies the content to be learned, or a lesson planning framework that helps teachers organize and plan lessons like the 5E framework. Purposes and potential uses. Faculty members could individually use the framework to improve their instruction, and we'll talk more about that. Faculty members could collaboratively use the framework within a structured peer observation process to improve their instruction. And STEM departments could use a framework to define research-based instruction and have conversations to not only improve instruction, but support constructive review, tenure, and promotion processes. So this is the front page of our instructional framework, our Better in STEM Equitable Student-Centered Instructional Framework. There are 4 components in the framework, which are indicated in the colored columns. The first 2 are culture and environment, and the second is curriculum and content. On the back side, we have discourse and language and assessment for learning. So each column on the framework is a component, and there's 4 components total. Each component includes a vision statement at the top, and each component is made up of a series of indicators, the numbered items. A big novel aspect of this is that the indicators meaningfully integrate evidence-based strategies from active student learning and equitable, inclusive student learning. Indicators are grouped by similar ideas into subcomponents, and indicators tend to become more complex as you move from top to bottom. So various places throughout this talk, we present the QR code, and you can access our framework on our website, as well as all of our resources, or in the blog that accompanies this talk. About 40 STEM faculty across our 3 institutions participated in cohort 1, as I mentioned. They committed to 2 years of working with us. And in the first year, we engaged in professional development on the practices and pedagogies from the first 2 components of the framework, culture and environment, and curriculum and content. Then we focused on the next 2 components during their second year of discourse and language and assessment for learning. We developed a number of supporting resources, and I'll talk in just a second about this planning consideration, but and how faculty use it. But we developed a faculty survey and student survey aligned to the framework indicators that we administer to partnering faculty and students in one of their courses at the end of each semester. And then faculty use their student data to identify their instructional strengths that they would like to build on and areas for improvement. Then, after they've identified indicator areas where they would like to improve, they refer to these planning resources documents like this one to identify ways to improve in those areas. In the planning resources, there is a 2-column document for each indicator. There's 31 indicators on the framework. So there's a 2-column document like this for each indicator that highlights what the indicator looks like in practice and how to do it, which includes instructional resources about how to implement the pedagogies to address each indicator area. To improve the implementation of evidence-based strategies, STEM faculty really need structured opportunities to practice new strategies with feedback from knowledgeable colleagues. And research has identified communities of practice where faculty work together to improve instruction as one of the most significant drivers of change in classroom instruction. So in the Better in STEM project, faculty collaborated within instructional change teams, or ICTs, that were comprised of 3 to 5 colleagues who met monthly to talk about their instruction, conduct peer observations and feedback, and analyze student data to inform their instructional improvements. Some of the ICTs were disciplinary based, and all the members were from the same discipline and department, and some were interdisciplinary. The majority of STEM faculty from our first cohort are continuing in a new role over the next 2 years as faculty leaders. And these faculty leaders will help facilitate conversations within their department about how to support instructional changes aligned with the framework. And to develop a critical mass of faculty using equitable student-centered practices, we are working with a second cohort of about 60 STEM faculty members across our 3 institutions to increase their knowledge and skills with the pedagogies from the instructional framework. Because once STEM departments have a shared vision for evidence-based teaching and a critical mass of faculty working to make their instruction more equitable and student-centered, then departments will be well positioned to examine and revise faculty review policies and practices to better support faculty members' use and effort to improve their instruction. So at the end of each semester on the student survey, we asked students several open-ended questions about the instructional strategies used most in their STEM classes, which were in green, the strategies that benefited their learning in purple, and the strategies that benefited their sense of belonging in the classroom learning environment in blue. We have an article that's under review in JARS, so hopefully some of this work will be coming out next year. After cohort 1's first semester with the Better in STEM project in fall of 22, you'll notice that lecture and teacher-guided learning were still prominent approaches to instruction in green. However, they were not strategies that students said most benefited their learning in the purple, the number of mentions from students in the purple. And very, very few students said that these teacher-directed approaches benefited their sense of belonging in class in the blue. Active learning strategies and small group learning were also approaches frequently used in cohort 1 classrooms, and they were strategies that students said benefited their learning and sense of belonging. And opportunities for practice, feedback, and revision were strategies that were less frequently employed, but ones that greatly benefited students' learning and belonging. Lastly, there were a number of strategies that were not prevalent in the STEM courses, but when used, students said that they greatly benefited their feelings of belonging in the STEM classroom learning environments. These included when professors humanized themselves and acknowledged power dynamics, when they set a tone that emphasized learning, engagement, and even fun, and faculty's attempts to get to know students and connect the learning to their interests and identities. All of these were less frequently used strategies, but ones that greatly benefited students' sense of belonging. Over cohort 1's first year, we did see some shifts in classroom instruction toward more equitable and active learning. We are still analyzing data across cohort 1's 2 years of participation with the Better in STEM project to see how their STEM instruction changed due to their engagement with the 4 categories of change. And the final take-home message is that we are seeing changes in faculty's use of evidence-based teaching strategies, but it takes more than 1 year and more than one approach. Change to identify and implement concurrent top-down and bottom-up change strategies. We really used the 4 categories of change to identify and implement those concurrent top-down and bottom-up strategies. And our work was really focused in those 4 areas to develop a shared vision of evidence-based STEM instruction, help faculty learn about the pedagogies that comprise the instructional framework that guides the vision, to provide opportunities and structures for faculty to collaborate with their colleagues in instructional change teams to improve their enactment of the pedagogies, and to initiate conversations within their departments about how to support faculty's use of equitable student-centered instruction. I'd like to thank you all for attending our presentation. This is a Herculean effort that takes a lot of people involved, and there are many people at all of our 3 institutions, as well as our advisory board and external evaluators, and our participants in cohort 1 and 2 have really all contributed to this work. So I'd like to thank them all, and thank you all for attending. And then after the breakout discussions today, if you still have questions or would like to learn more about the Better in STEM project, then please visit our website or feel free to contact us directly. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Hanley, for sharing this framework with us. Just a reminder for anyone out there, I shared the link where you can access the slides. You can get a look at those resources again. I'll share that link again momentarily. But I'd now like to welcome our next speaker, Brandon White. He's a grant program coordinator at Palm Beach State College. So with that, Brandon, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Let me get these slides loaded up. Now, I want to do this earlier, glitched a little bit on me, so I may disappear for a few seconds, but I'm here.
Just has to buffer for a moment.
All right. Are you seeing me okay, Tom?
Yep, that's coming through well.
All right, fantastic. Look at that. First try. Let's get set up here. Well, first off, thank you all for being here. Thank you, Dr. Hanley. Fantastic work you're doing. I took a screenshot of your contact information. I'm definitely going to follow up with you. We are doing some faculty work in our project as well, and I think some of your approaches are really interesting. So I want to see if we can communicate a little bit. But I also want to thank the AAAS team. Drew and Thomas have been fantastic people to work with. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to be here and share our work with the community. My name is Brandon White, and I coordinate the NSF-IUSE program, grant program at Palm Beach State College called the STEM Articulation and Transfer Collaborative. And we call it the SATC project for short. And I want to shout out our grant team, Dr. Becky Mercer is our PI, Dr. Yvonne Resler and Cynthia Judd, our co-PIs, and our outreach specialist, Jada Brooks, and grant tutor, Bruna Sharkey. These wonderful people help make this project successful and effective and meaningful and impactful for our students. Every other adjective you can think of. Could not do what I do without them. And they've truly helped shape our approach from the inside out. So the goal of today's workshop is to share some of the weak points our team has identified in the current model or approach to student support services, mainly as it relates to being aware of and addressing cultural challenges facing traditionally underserved students. From there, we'll share some of the ways our team has approached these weaknesses and how we've tried to shape things culturally ourselves within the institution, as well as some institutional policies through faculty and staff development and collaboration projects. There we go. So a little bit of background on PBSC. We are a primarily two-year community Hispanic serving institution in South Florida. Although we are a state institution, we do offer bachelor programs, still pretty limited right now. We have an annual enrollment of about 25,000, with nearly 70% of our students in part-time status. About 35.9% of our students identify as Hispanic or Latino. Nearly 60% of our total enrollment are female. Our average student age is roughly 24 years old. Nearly half of all of our enrollments, any type, are identified as first-generation college students. So that brings a unique mix of challenges. We're also a open access institution, so we serve the entire community through multiple avenues, degree programs, certificate programs, trade schools, you name it, we've got it here at PBSC. I want to highlight our grant program a little bit. I realize now, so I'm talking, I should throw a bullet point up there. But either way, the SATC grant was initially proposed and funded in 2019 as a means for supporting our Hispanic STEM students in their AA graduation and successful transfer to a four-year institution partner of ours here in South Florida, Florida Atlantic University, FAU, particularly in their College of Science. The project is now entering year 6. We had a little delay there with COVID. You guys remember 2020. So we did have to move things down the line a little bit, but we are entering our 6th and final year of the project now. Our core approach for supporting students from a cultural standpoint was really built on a model that FAU has helped pioneer alongside Dr. Jennifer Bloom, Dr. Bryant Hudson, and Dr. Yihei, called appreciative advising. Appreciative advising is a very simple model at its core, but it seems a bit revolutionary when you think about how we currently do things across the board when it comes to student services. What they really try to focus on is looking at students as people first and try to understand the multiple factors that are going on in their life, from their cultural background, socioeconomics, social constraints, their interests, their personality, characteristics, their goals, language, anything that influences them as a person. They try to identify those things and see how they impact their needs and ultimately what's going to be key for their success long term. Now, institutionally, we ran into some limitations applying the model across the board, and I'll touch on more of that in a few minutes when we look at some of these weak points of the system. However, we were able to incorporate a lot of core elements through both professional development opportunities, conferences, and just collaborative processes, collaborative programs and initiatives with faculty and staff, as well as administrators and higher levels. And we were able to kind of pilot the model, so to speak, ourselves within the grant program with our own cohort of students. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward as well. We found appreciative advising to be an excellent foundational model. We highly recommend you consider looking into it to improve your own approaches, or just to test your approaches a little bit and see if there's things you can tweak and grow a little bit in different directions. Definitely recommend you start at FAU's Department of Appreciative Advising. I believe Dr. Bloom herself is still there. I know she's been working there for several years. I've actually received multiple trainings from her and the team there. It's fantastic, so I can attest to that myself. I have some resources included in a handout that Thomas and Drew helped make available online. So if you'd like to check that out, there are links in there for some of those trainings and get more information. With that said, I want to just take a minute to kind of set the frame for today's workshop. When we look at student services, there's a lot of differing philosophies, differing approaches. And I'm definitely not here to say that we found, the approach that everyone should be taking, or that we don't have any weaknesses of our own in how we do things. But what I do want to do is just give you a framework that we found to be very successful and impactful for students, and how we've developed it, why we've developed it. And maybe there's some elements that you can take away similar to appreciative advising that can apply to your own institution, to your own practices, whatever role you're in, and connect and build meaningful relationships with students that make a difference. So with that said, we of course believe foundationally in empowering students, personal resiliency, their agency, their motivation, and of course personal responsibility as core principles for their success, not only academically but in life as a whole. However, what we've seen and what we believe is that not every student comes equipped with those things from day one. They don't have necessarily the full tool bag developed, right? And that seems pretty obvious. They're here, they're young in most cases, right? But even students who are older, non-traditional, no one is built the same. We've found so many areas in which either prior schooling experiences, cultural experiences, social orientation, social constraints have impacted students' ability to succeed in these areas, to showcase, basic things like time management, understanding how to navigate, work, life, school, how to rely on support resources, and how to identify, strategies for working through challenges where maybe struggles they're facing personally, academically, and seeing where we can step in and help in those areas wherever student services is not currently doing so. That's been the focus of our project. And, we find that, a lot of these things are either minimally addressed or go completely unaddressed in the normal student support model that we see in institutions. So, education can be a fantastic training ground for students, not only in their professional development, for their future. We're here to build up future workers, right? But we're here also with an opportunity to build up people and to improve people's lives and ultimately our world, right? And if we can find ways of doing that, it doesn't go too far outside the norm, doesn't go too far outside of our abilities, why wouldn't we want to take that if we're trying to be ultimately the best educators that we can be? Of course, not all institutions are, built the same. Not all student services systems are alike either, and so some of the things that I'll talk about today, they don't necessarily manifest in the same way for everyone. There's varying degrees depending on, how things are structured at your home institution, how certain administrators, get involved and how they respond to issues and identify issues. Of course, there's other grant projects, like what Dr. Hanley is working on. They're out there pioneering new approaches. There's so much in play that you can't say across the board. These are issues everywhere. This is what we've identified in our experience from research that we've conducted, from work that we've seen in the community being done, and these are some of the approaches that we've found to be effective. And of course, it may not be completely applicable where you're at, but there are, again, elements that you might be able to take, things that you can tweak, things you can explore in your own home or in the way you approach things personally. So, of course, I'm speaking from generality here. There's going to be a lot of differing views, and I hope that we can have some meaningful discussion after the presentation and explore some of those things together today and walk away all the better for it. Of course, we also need to address, we're operating in the real world. There are definitely limitations in staffing, funding for projects. A lot of what we've identified as weaknesses, are there because of the nature of just education, the way that we attract, so many students from so many different backgrounds. It's very hard to create something that works, as a one size fits all. And so there, there's also issues with high volume, and you just get the amount of students, coming in the door. It's difficult to manage, so there are a lot of things out there that are very real challenges. So I'm not here stating, oh, just do it this way, it's gonna be fun. I just wanted to throw that out there. The wholesale changes might not be applicable, but there's definitely certain things you can do. And we've seen this at our own institution as well. There's certain things that are just not possible given the resources here that are available. But there are things that we have been able to change from a cultural standpoint that has made a big difference. And I'll talk a little bit about that today. So one of the things that we've tried doing from day one is be careful not to just throw things at the wall and see what sticks. We've tried to guide all of our work and tailor it from student feedback, from student conversations. And so we've identified, our target demographic being Hispanic students, although our program has worked with students from all different types of backgrounds. We have not been exclusive by any means. What we've seen primarily with our more underserved community is that there's been a need for practical skills. A lot of things people would call soft skills, social skills, things like time management, handling finances, improving study habits, handling social dynamics, connecting with professors, building networks, building support from the community. What we've seen from our student feedback is really there are cracks in kind of the traditional services that we have available. There's things that are not really covering areas of need. And sometimes these areas, they seem small for students. They don't seem like they make a difference, but they really can, especially when they compound with other areas too. And so we try to really understand what are the needs, where are students struggling, and how can we try to step in and fill in those gaps to provide them more support. And so, you see here on the screen, we found, some of the issues aforementioned. We've also seen through surveys, through conversations informally with students, through advising practices, through activities, through workshops and programs. The grant that we work with, we have so many different avenues that we've been exploring. But what we see consistently is students hitting on cultural issues. These soft skills or these areas of kind of the outside classroom skills are impactful, and they are areas of struggle. And so we're trying to find ways of addressing those holistically. We'll start going through these a little bit. When we look at the bigger picture of student services model, we've identified several key weak points. These are the three, I'd say, most impactful, or the areas that we've tried to address the most, and maybe we've had most success with. You can say that way too. First is a lack of coordination between student services departments, and so you don't have a very good cohesion between, say, the advising department, financial aid department, or the counseling department, for mental health and the tutoring center. There's just not enough communication happening between these areas, and that's something that we definitely set out to address. There's also a lack of proper preparation for students in navigating the higher education system, and there's also a lack of holistic student support interactions. And what we found is that's really by design. As I mentioned earlier, some of the ways things are set up currently, it's truly by design. Maybe there's not enough resources there, or it's what's been found to be the most efficient. At the end of the day, being an institution that it is driven by numbers. A lot of cases there's some things that are just going to be there out of necessity. And so we really try to find innovative ways of addressing that, and we'll start going through these key areas. And again, echoing what Thomas stated earlier, we will have time to discuss these things. So if you have questions, concerns along the way, please, jot them down. You can put them in the chat. We can access them later, whatever works for you. I'm going to go a little bit quick through these. As much as I'd love to sit here, I could sit here and talk about this stuff all day, but I do want to try to be brief for everyone's time. We're going to start with the lack of coordination. So as I mentioned before, there seems to be a lack of coordination between different departments. There's not enough interaction going on. There's not enough updating each other with new information. And so we try to dive in and understand, where was the disconnect, and how can we get everyone on and keep everyone on the same page. It seems like there's also a major issue of turnover. You get people coming and going. So it's very difficult to, incorporate consistent onboarding and training, where new staff are exposed, sufficiently to other departments and how other student services can benefit and complement the work they're doing. So when we see these, communication gaps, we're seeing that students are kind of getting lost in the weeds. We'll see that student issues can get turned into referrals. Let's say someone goes into the advising office and they're asking questions about their financial aid. Okay, hey, go talk to the financial aid department. And so they kind of get shipped off to the next group, and they go from there. Yet there are so many questions that could be answered, at least from an overview standpoint, not necessarily advising and expertise in areas, but there's information that can be passed along from advising staff, or there's information that can be passed along from facility staff, from security staff. There's so many different interaction points across the support system at an institution that could be better informed and help guide students properly, so they're not getting lost in translation, getting lost in between these things. Because as we know, you work with a student, you kind of lay out all the information, and then they have to go from point A to point B, of course. And they don't always do that. And so if there's ways that we can reduce the amount of kind of back and forth they've got to do, ultimately they're going to be better off for it. And of course, there's also issues, again, from an institutional standpoint, where it's difficult to see so many students in one period, right? And so if we can cut down on the amount of people we kind of put back into the queue, or students we put back into the queue for these services, that can make a big difference across the board. And ultimately, it helps students know that they can come to people for help with these issues and have them addressed somewhat singularity. So another area, or say we'll go into best practices first, my apologies. We look at, for addressing lack of coordination, is establishing a robust referral chain between departments. So this looks like, instead of just saying, okay, student, you need to go to financial aid or you need to go to the tutoring center, it's actually having a connection to these departments. And so having a place, not just a place, but a person that you can connect them with and say, hey, this is Jesse, go talk with Jesse. He's going to help you here. Or setting up an email where you can connect them through email, setting up a phone call. Hey, I'm sending over Tom, he's coming to see you, Jesse. You need some help with college algebra, right? Whatever it might be. That has a big impact on students. It helps make sure they're following through on that process. They know they don't have to just go figure it out. They know exactly where they're going. They know who they're talking with. They know that they're supported and cared for. Creating this referral chain is not difficult either. It really just requires taking a little bit of time to step outside of whatever your normal role is and making connections. It's far easier for us to do that as professionals already. You have the experience and training to do so than it is for an 18, 19, 20, or 26-year-old even, whatever it might be, student who's coming in here, especially those who may be coming in with a lack of experience or formal training in these areas. How do I go make that connection? How do I open that door? We can be that for them. And so we also see another area where we've worked on this is actually threefold. One is through establishing Microsoft Teams channels. Now, this was actually a result of COVID, creating a digital world for us all, or virtual world for us all. But it's something that's had a lasting impact, as we've seen the effectiveness of being able to openly communicate with different departments. And so if there is somebody, say, working in advising that does not have the answers that are needed, does not have the training, does not have the connection point, they can put in an open question to these Teams channels that are open for all student services, say, hey, I need help with this issue. And then someone from these respective areas can then give guidance there. It cuts down again on that back and forth between areas. It makes people more informed, more connected. It's a really big benefit. And we've been working to try to foster these as much as we can. And we do so in collaborative projects with different departments that we set out to accomplish with our programming and activities. Another area is what's called a STEM academic community. This is based on a community model that you've probably seen or heard talked about. It's kind of sweeping across higher education in different areas now. This is a part of PBSC's overall strategic plan. Moving forward, they're working on establishing communities for each of our pathways, so STEM, business, our health sciences, et cetera. And what it does is it brings people together from different areas of student services and our faculty, puts them together in one room. We have routine meetings monthly. We set up special outreach events. We work on programming. We work on curriculum updates. We look at strategic goals for the college as it relates to our area or discipline. And what it really does is it helps foster those connections for us as professionals so that we can, again, reinforce that referral chain so that we can work more collaboratively on projects and get people communicating. It also opens the door for more consistent updates so that the right hand knows what the left is doing, from academic affairs to student services, which makes a huge difference. And this is something that our grant team has been really involved in, trying to build and continue to foster and bring more people into the fold and run different activities and events to support this success and the growth of this project. Another area is through annual, what we call C3 conferences. These actually do the same thing roughly as the STEM academic communities, but they're not just for PBSC people. They also connect us to our FAU partners. And so we get usually pretty discipline specific. We'll go into like the biologies, the chemistries, mathematics, and we'll connect faculty and staff from these areas together. We do these virtually, annually, up to 2 times a year, and we'll get them together talking about issues that are going on in, say, the transfer pipeline. We'll talk about best practices. We'll do a lot of similar things to what Dr. Hanley was talking about before us. And that's something, again, a connection point that I want to make with you, Dr. Hanley, to see how we can maybe explore some of these things together. But this has been a fantastic way of helping our students build more connections in the community as well. And so we see it's not only important to have these supports at the institution of PBSC, but to set up these supports for long-term transition points to FAU. I realize now my time, I'm talking a little slow. I'm going to go a little bit quicker here, guys, and try to get to the next points. We can talk more about these in our discussions. Again, if you have questions, please take note, take them down. I'd love to explore them more with you. And of course, we can also talk afterwards. If you ever want to reach out, we can set up a call. Be happy to go in more depth on these different projects we have going on. So we also identified a lack of preparation for navigating higher education. Students, coming in with, I'd say, best example I can give, we work with a lot of students from South and Central America, the Caribbean. The education system there is completely different from the US system. And so they come in, they don't understand what the right steps are. They don't understand what kind of resources are available. They don't understand how the pathway aligns for them to reach XYZ goal they have. And so if they were just kind of thrown into the system, they have to figure a lot of these things out themselves. And by no means do I want to skip over, the importance of the work that our orientation teams do, or introduction to college, or freshman seminars, some people call it. These teams are doing amazing work. I can speak from experience. I used to work an orientation team years ago, and it's a very tough job and a very thankless job in a lot of ways. They catch way too much heat than they should for issues that are far bigger than they're equipped to handle. But still, there are limitations there. In a lot of cases, students who transfer in to the college, they're not required to go through these processes, orientations, or seminars or intro college classes. We get students who come in for certificates or trade schools. They are not required to do these things in a lot of cases, and they may change their path down the road, go into a degree program, and now they're completely lost, or they're lost as a certificate seeker or a trade school student, because these things are not required across the board. So there's definitely a disconnect there. When we see this, lack of support turns into just a trial and error dynamic for students. It just takes up valuable time. It compounds issues they're facing, and it makes the journey much more difficult to pursue long term. And that really leads to, if you kind of look at what the core of that is, it really leads to frustration for students, right? But the core issue stemming from it is a lack of social capital, lack of understanding of how the system works, because they have not experienced it themselves, and they don't have people around them that have experienced it themselves or who work in the system. That is a huge advantage that a lot of people don't see, or one of those hidden privileges that we don't often account for. But social capital is a valuable resource for students, and that's something that we really try to apply in helping address these issues when it comes to preparation. And so what we've tried to do is incorporate opportunities for social capital, not only when we're talking with students, stressing the importance of making connections, but being a connection ourselves, making sure we're connecting with students in different avenues, activities on campus, of course, outreach initiatives, right? Being around, making sure that we're open and accessible, but then also making sure we're using those referral chains, that we're getting them involved in some of these examples I have on the screen. You can see things like career panels, where we get students to come out and connect with professionals in the field. We have on-campus activities. We work with our student life department and collaborate and create, celebrations for like Hispanic Heritage Month, or we get together and celebrate STEM, like Math Awareness Week. And we try to really connect students with other people. So not only professionals from the field, which is huge, right, but also faculty members here at the college, additional support staff from different services, other peers. We have a peer cohort that we try to get students plugged into, where they can mentor each other and support each other. That's a really big tool for supporting students. And so developing, practices like this, are making a difference. It is making a difference long term on student success, and we'll touch a little bit more on the data of that in a minute. But another point I wanted to bring up here as it relates to weak points. Actually, time, let's just keep going. Last, we'll look at a lack of holistic student support during interactions. And now this, I do not mean to say, is again, speaking in generality, I'm not saying everyone does this, but by design, in many cases, the support services that we have established are designed as kind of the 10 items or less checkout line at the grocery store. You have, an issue or two, maybe you have to find the right resource first, find the right line. You got to get in it, you're in it for 2 seconds, and then you're out. That is, again, in some cases by design, volume, resources being limited, trying to be effective, right, or efficient, understandable in all cases. However, what we see with this, right, is that you leave students kind of in the dark with a lot of their needs unaddressed. You leave them without that connection point, right? Without that relationship in a lot of cases, because it's kind of come in, get your question answered, go, right? Come in, have a problem, get it fixed, go. There's not the opportunity for students to really connect with people, build a relationship, and have a conversation that expands, right? Allows you to go into the deeper issues that are going on, or the issues that are underlying that are going to come up, and now you got to put them back into the line again, right? You can actually address those ahead of time. And so some of the things that we've tried to do here is, again, applying some principles from the appreciative advising model, or some elements. We've tried to address students first, right? Let's have a conversation before we just dive into the issue. How's life going? How are classes? How's work? Are you working? You know, what's that look like? Family okay? Let's have a conversation and get to know somebody as a person first, and address the issues kind of as we go along, and make sure that we establish ourselves as mentors, as people that you can go to for supports. Even if we don't have all the answers, that's okay. But what we can do is be that person they go to when they have that initial question, when they're not sure how to handle something. Then we can then, of course, rope other people in, bring other resources in, establish those networks, and kind of happens organically through that process. And so we've tried to establish this not only from our cohort perspective, which has been fantastic. We've got great responses from students, and I'll touch on that in a minute. But we've also had the opportunity of sharing this with other staff members, working collaboratively with groups. We've had professional development opportunities, and we've also been able to work with faculties. And faculty are an important part of this whole system as well. Oftentimes they get kind of excluded when we talk about student services, but they are with students a lot, right? Their influence is great, like, for the better or worse. And so understanding the connection point there, and understanding how we can incorporate some type of holistic support, right? You have to include faculty. And so we've also provided opportunities for faculty development, talking about ways of incorporating ideas like appreciative advising. There's a really great frame of reference that we've used from Dr. Paul Hernandez. He has a book called The Pedagogy of Real Talk, and I've got that linked in my resources sheet as well. Understanding, how we can, again, approach students first, understanding them as people, and figuring out how we can better support them holistically in their interactions, and then how we can incorporate those conversations into other student support models. So it's not that it has to be this weight that gets put on the faculty member that they have to carry, but it opens doors for them to use to help guide students through to other supports that are already there. And so building that cohesiveness between all of these different elements. The simple ways that we've incorporated elements of appreciative advising, just to give you guys a few examples real quick, and I'll wrap up here. Simple, open-ended questions can make all the difference. I can't tell you when I was going through my training, when I was a student myself, how many conversations I had with advising or admissions staff, financial aid staff, tutors, whoever it was, people that I saw during my training periods as a new employee myself, they were so limited in their scope. It was, what's the problem? Okay, let's address the problem. What's your major? Okay, we're gonna go off on this. There was no, what are you going to school for? What's the goal? What's interesting you about this, right? How's life going? Just opening that door. And some students, of course, are not going to take it. You're going to get the shy, you're going to get the kids on the phone, whatever, that happens. But just starting that conversation, opening that, exploring that can make a huge difference. You'd be surprised how many students are really quick to respond and actually open the door with you. It's amazing. We've also emphasized, as I mentioned earlier, open communication through several methods: phone calls, emails, group chats, attending campus events, holding open office hours. Right now, I'm holding virtual open office hours once a week. Students pop in, quick question, hey, how's it going? Share an update. Or I'll sometimes get some in there and just we sit and talk about video games, right? We were talking about the storm last week, how's life going? Things like that just make a difference, or connection points, make it easy and accessible for students to find that support when they need it. So briefly, we'll talk about some of the student impacts that we've seen. So our team has worked with over 14,000 students at PBSC during the last 4 years of really active implementation, with roughly 2,000 of them being incorporated directly into our caseload for tracking and monitoring, and for routine checkups, getting involved in programs, activities, workshops. visiting classrooms, connecting with faculty members for presentations and running through different support services. We've incorporated our tutors into classrooms as well for additional support. We've seen an increase in our graduation rate from our cohort over our non-grant affected students. We see a 47.5% graduation rate for our cohort versus a 40% for non-grant affected students during this period. We've seen a significant bump for self-identified Hispanic students at 53.6% within our cohort, and compared that to a 31.3% for non-grant affected students who identify as Hispanic at PBSC. Apologies for the writing on that. I should have double checked. We are seeing a difference. And what we need to do now is dive further into the weeds to understand how our individual practices are affecting this. How are things aligning? Because we're seeing an alignment, we're seeing support, we're seeing indications, we're seeing all the good things you want to throw in there saying that stuff is working. We just need to dive deeper in understanding why it's working, what's most effective. And so we are conducting additional research with an external evaluation team to try to identify the core elements of what's doing the biggest lifting. I think ultimately, from my perspective, I think it's a little bit of everything. I think providing as many resources as we do, providing opportunities for support, social capital growth, helping students navigate the challenges they're facing. I think a little bit of everything is making the biggest difference, when you put it all together. But of course, we'll let the research decide ultimately and make the final call on that. But we will be conducting additional surveys. We're following up with students and seeing how we can better identify those details. If anyone is interested and wants to learn more about kind of the nitty gritty of that stuff, please, feel free to reach out and we can talk about it in our discussion as well today. With that said, thank you all for your time. Apologies for running through it a little bit. It's so tricky putting these things together. I don't know if you guys know or not. I don't know if you can tell. I really like my job. I love doing the work that we're doing here. And I feel like I could talk about it all day. So trying to condense it into 20 to 25 minutes, brevity is not a strong suit of mine anyway, but especially in a case like this, when I'm really passionate about it, I just want to share so much. So thank you for working through with me on the lightning pace. And please, again, feel free to ask questions. And I really look forward to connecting with you guys further after this. Thank you again to the AAAS team, Thomas and Drew. Been fantastic to work with. Appreciate it. Thank you to Dr. Hanley. Of course, special thank you to my team. Could not do anything that we're doing without them. Dr. Becky Mercer, Dr. Yvonne Resler, Cynthia Judd, of course, Jada Brooks, and Bruna Sharkey. Fantastic people to work with as well. So that's it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much for sharing your work with us today, Brandon. We're going to now transition to some breakout sessions for Q&A and further discussions. Breakout rooms are self-assigned and organized by speaker pairs. I'm going to ask my colleague Drew to go ahead and open those breakout rooms now. And you should see a pop-up on your screen allowing you to select a breakout room. Or if you don't see a pop-up, you can navigate to the bottom of your screen and select the breakout rooms button and click the room that you prefer to join. If you're running an older version of Zoom and you don't see the breakout room button, feel free to either drop it in the chat or come off mute and let us know which room you want to go in. They're separated by the presenters' last names, Hanley and White. And yeah, just so you know, we'll call you back to the larger group at about 3:25 Eastern time, so 25 past the hour, for some takeaways. So have a productive discussion, everyone. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Okay, so before we head out, I would like to thank our speakers and facilitators for joining us today. And I wanted to see if we could get just a quick 1-minute recap from each room. So Dan, if you wouldn't mind going first, if you just share with the group what your group talked about.
Sure. Our group talked about several things. One was kind of the barriers and incentives and how to sustain this work. And so we talked about how our project is working from this top down and bottom up approaches to really help departments kind of value and incentivize this work. and then what were challenges to faculty, some of the ubiquitous of workload and time, and how we really encourage them to start with something manageable and try it, and be often when you try something new, it doesn't go as well. How to help them be proficient, and that's where their colleagues and instructional change teams kind of come in to give them feedback about that. And then some around the data, we ended around the use of the faculty and student surveys to really get a sense. There was a strong correlation between faculty and student surveys about how they rated the indicators. So we really do have, students are incredibly insightful about what works well for them in classrooms and what doesn't, and they were really able to rate pretty accurately what the ways, if they were engaged and experienced, if the classroom learning environment engaged them in certain ways, and faculty, which corroborated by faculty's reports of their use of pedagogies to address each of the indicators in the framework.
Great, that's great. Sounds like you covered a lot of ground in your group. So thanks for joining us today. And Brandon, could you share a little bit about your room?
Sure. Well, great questions, good discussion. Very thankful for the group. We talked about some of the opportunities for peer mentorship, how important that can be, getting students connected with each other. Some of the strategies that we've employed through the program. It's an area that we're still working on, something we really want to build up more as we move forward, because it's key. It's key getting support from students. It just you can preach until you're blue in the face on something, but if it comes from a student, it just hits differently for some reason, a peer to peer. We also discussed some of the challenges of maintaining consistent notes across different platforms, different services at the institution, and some of the ways we've tried to address that with our tracking systems and for a cohort and just for students in general that we work with. There are definitely major challenges, that are set up from the top down, but we try our best to navigate them and see what we can do to establish the personal connections between resources. Microsoft Teams, using that, setting up those channels has been really helpful for us. We also talked about helping students, follow through on connecting with other resources or connecting with mentors, other professionals, people that can be there to support them. The reluctant student who wants to avoid those things, even if you're screaming at them. How do we get them to follow through? How do we get them to connect? And it's definitely an area of challenge for us. But one of the things that we've tried to do is one, make them not so scary. So lower the entry fee there. Try to make it easy for them to get involved. It doesn't have to be, hey, go sit and have a cup of coffee with this person. It's send them an email. It's not that bad, and then also try to bring those people into the fold as much as we can. So have events where we bring them in from the community, get them in front of students, and make it easy to access. That's been very key for us.
Sounds great. Yeah, some great tips there. Well, thank you both so much for being here and sharing your work with us. Thank you to the facilitators for also joining this discussion, and to all of you that joined this meeting today. I'd also like to thank the rest of our AAA SIUSE team for putting this together. This is our last workshop from our fall series and our last of 2024. But if you're not subscribed to our list already, make sure you do so on our website. We're going to be having another call for submissions for next year's series of workshops and blogs as well. So we love to hear from our community, and we love to feature their work. So please do consider submitting to that. It'll be coming out at the end of October here. We also have a survey link, which we're posting in the chat, and we'll also send via email. So let us know what you think of this series, so we can take your feedback and update our next year and take your feedback and put it into practice for our coming workshop series in 2025. As a reminder, the recording will come up next week, but you can access the materials on our website now, but we will send them around via email. And finally, for those of you interested in submitting a proposal for an IUSE project, or if there are any awardees that you would like to connect with an NSF program officer, NSF has scheduled a series of office hours for this fall and winter as a way for prospective applicants to communicate with program officers and ask any questions. So you'll find the office hours and a link to their Zoom room on our website, and we'll link to that in the chat. So until next time, and as always, we look forward to learning from you, our AAAIS community, and take care and enjoy the rest of the year. Enjoy the rest of the semester.